Well, Tom Hanks' new movie, News of the World, is being met with fairly positive reviews. Matt Perrin shares his thoughts on the film in your Monday Movie Musings.
Welcome to another Monday. With theaters still being an iffy bet, streaming services are still my go-to for new movies. Luckily, one of the anticipated theater releases has been released to streaming with the nominal fee, of course. Every year, Tom Hanks is in a movie that just by his presence makes you wonder if it will get any awards buzz. This past year has seen him in two, and even though I was never able to see Greyhound, I was able to take in his newest. And without any further ado, let's take a look at News of the World. Our film begins with Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd, played by Hanks. It's 5 years after the Civil War, and having fought for Texas and returned to nothing, he now makes a living traveling town to town and reading the news. It's a pretty repetitive lifestyle until one day on his travel to another town, he comes across a sacked wagon and discovers a young girl, Johanna, played by Helena Zengel. She speaks no English, but through her papers, he learns that her family was killed by Kiowa Indians, and she was taken and spent the last 6 years being raised by them. The army had taken her back, and she was being transported to live with her biological aunt and uncle, and after a few hurdles, it turns out that Captain Kidd is going to have to assume the responsibility of getting her there. These hurdles are about to pale in comparison to the challenges these two will face trying to cross post-Civil War Texas. They'll deal with the elements, treacherous terrain, too tough to cross in a wagon, and of course the seediest of individuals intending to take the girl for their own nefarious reasons. The captain will have to use all of his service survival and fighting skills to keep both himself and the young Johanna safe. As the movie progresses, we see the inevitable bond forming between the most unlikely of travel companions. We get expanded versions of both their backstories. We also learn that a language barrier is the easiest to overcome through a real connection. The two continue to learn from each other and make headway towards returning Johanna to where she lawfully belongs. We, as the audience, have a bit of a slow ride, but it is well interspersed with scenes of action and tension. We can see the ending coming a mile away, but the 399 miles before it keeps our emotions spinning. So, what to say about this one? As I alluded to a second ago, there are parts of this that move at a bit of a slower pace, but there's always something about to happen right around the next bend to keep you engrossed. And yes, there's really no surprises to this one, but the acting definitely still makes it fun to get there. But you probably already knew that. I mean, Tom Hanks seems incapable of doing something terrible. If you read that he slapped a baby, admit it. Your first reaction would be, I wonder what that baby did to poor Tom Hanks. But in all seriousness, his emotional range really lets you feel where he's coming from in this one. Lately, we're used to seeing him portray real-life historical figures, and although there wasn't a real-life Captain Kidd, the character is loosely based on the great-great-grandfather of a friend of the author's, so Hanks makes you believe this man was real enough. The delightful surprise is newcomer Helena Zengel. You would wonder how tough it would be to play a role where speaking isn't a major part of it, but everything she's feeling is perfectly conveyed through subtle nuances she brings to the character, both actions and facial expressions. Looking forward to seeing what she brings to the table in the many years to come. So overall, this is what you expect to see in a new Tom Hanks movie. It will give you all the feels as you move through it. However, I can see some people getting bored at the pacing or the Western theme. But it is an adaptation of a Western novel, so if that isn't your cup of tea, I understand. Myself, though, I'm glad I gave it a look. This has been your Monday Movie Musing. Back to you.
Well, stick with us. Tyler has one last look at your forecast when the news at noon continues.